Hello.
Hey, Simon.
Hey, Simon, it's Skylar. How you doing?
Simon.
Hello, Simon.
What's up, Simon?
Hello.
How you doing?
Hey.
Hello.
Simon.
Hello, Simon. Hello, Simon.
Hello, my name is Simon Brooks, and I am the host of Conversations with Storytellers, a podcast of wisdom, thoughts, and folk and fairy tales from our elders, a meeting with professional storytellers. I once decided to travel around the country when I could to interview some of the elders in the community of traditional storytelling, people who, for their work, travel about telling myths and legends, folk and fairy tales. Each storyteller shares their thoughts on our profession and gems of wisdom and sometimes a story or two. I'm glad you're here. Eth-No-Tec are a tour de force of storytelling, taking performance and tandem telling to a whole other level. Nancy and Robert are highly decorated. They've received a National Storytelling Network Circle of Excellence Award, San Francisco Green Business Award. They have been Artist of the Year, won a Parents' Choice Gold Award, a National Parenting Silver Award, an Emmy for Best PBS Pilot, a Bronze Telly for Jackie Torrance Presents Asian Stories, and an Izzy finalist. Whew! Robert and Nancy have travelled and performed all over the world and extensively across the States, sharing traditional Asian and Asian American tales. These two people are wonderful tellers. I hope you enjoy this conversation. So Robert and Nancy, thank you so much for joining me on Conversations with Storytellers. I have admired you for a great deal of time, and I'm very excited that we've been able to finally nail down a date and get together and do stuff together, which is exciting for me. So first of all, how did you two meet?
Wow.
Well, I auditioned for a musical play at the Asian American Theater Workshop and
In San Francisco.
And Robert happened to be the musical director of the play, and that's how we met. Yeah. I got the part of a dance. I was going to be a dancer in it and the understudy of the wolf, but then they took all the dances out. So I did light, and Robert continued as the musical director.
Yeah. And we were all part of this in the mid to late 70s in San Francisco, as in many urban areas. There is a cultural magnet happening among Asian American artists, and they wanted to come to the big city to find themselves, explore this new idea called Asian America with history and culture and community service. And so
it was a huge Asian American arts
organization.
Movement.
And I had been actively involved in that with cultural activism, with songwriting and singing at rallies and things. And Nancy was fairly new to that scene. I hadn't
to the
seen
Asian
her
American
before.
scene. I was mostly in the white and multicultural scene as a dancer and choreographer, teaching dance, modern dance.
Right, because that was your background, right, Nancy?
Mm-hmm.
You were a dancer originally.
Yes.
Yeah. So when she appeared, it was like, wow, who's the new face in town? Yeah. So I had my sights set on her, and the stage was set.
And in the 70s, you could do that.
Yes. 40 years.
It wasn't frowned upon in the 70s. So Robert, your background also is not storytelling originally.
It's music,
right?
Yeah, mostly music, songwriting, and I'm a multi-instrumentalist. Keyboard is my strength. But songwriting at that time for me was all about social justice and political songs that are related to the Asian American environment. And so part of that too was to become to find a traditional type of music that would be very ancient. So I discovered that part of me that's Filipino. I discovered Philippine gong music called kulintang, and it's a bronze gong music that's about 3rd century Mindanao, Philippines. And so I traveled there and studied and came back and started teaching. At that time, Nancy and I already worked together. So we both sort of started this phenomenon in the Bay Area of traditional Philippine gong music. I mean, there were many Filipinos. There were other groups doing Filipino cultural things.
More Spanish oriented.
Yeah, more colonized music and culture. And ours was an indigenous art form. So it really was unique.
It started a whole movement. Now there's several several performing groups using kulintang.
Right. So we weren't at all familiar with storytelling.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So when someone asked us, I'm doing a conference and I was thinking of having storytelling in it. Do you guys tell stories?
And we thought,
Huh?
what's that? Oh, yeah,
Well,
sure.
yeah, sure we do.
A
And
gig.
then we go, oh my God, what is storytelling?
It's money, right?
There's a gig. Yeah, sure. Okay. So we found a story. Our very first story was 10,000 Treasure Caves from the Dong ethnic minority group in China. It's basically like an Alibaba and the 40 Thieves, a cave of treasures. And it became one of our signature pieces. In fact, for many years, it was the only story. Maybe we knew one other story.
We need two others.
Yeah, but we hadn't really we didn't get much traction in the storytelling world till soon after that. It just shot up like a rocket.
And as soon as some reason it just took off, and maybe it was because we didn't know what storytelling was. That the storytelling world in America is standing at a microphone and just telling the story. But we used our own background, so choreography and
music,
dance movement, and
we
music,
have theater background too.
We both had some theater, so we put all those together to create the story performance. And because there were two of us, we obviously did it. The two of us, we didn't know that that most people were solo artists.
Right.
And we had the story police blew the whistle on us many times, saying, "Oh, they're not storytellers. They move around too much. They act. They're acting and they're dancing stories." And we say, "Yeah, we'll have, as you heard of, Bharatanatyam, South Classical Music Theater Dance from India, or Rakugo, which is Japanese traditional storytelling with lots of gestures, or many Asian traditions of storytelling incorporate music, song, dance, theater." And so we were inspired by those forms, and we just kept doing what we do. Plus, you had a little Gene Kelly, Three Stooges, Danny Kaye, physical comedy folks, and we always added that element into it as well.
That's nice. So what did you study at college, both of you?
I have a master's in social work, so I also had a private practice.
Yeah.
Okay.
In
You're also a
psychotherapy.
And she has a lifetime client too.
That's you, right?
Yeah, oh boy.
A piece of work.
I don't think the 50 minutes will ever be over.
No, it's not over. It never ends.
But so I had a private practice, and I was still teaching dance and choreographing for companies and stuff like that.
Yeah. My background, I was in science. Zoology was my major at UC Davis in California.
Right.
And I was actually a pre-med. I was trying to get into medical school to be a good son, just like my father, the doctor, and my mom, the nurse. I got to be a doctor, be in healthcare. And then when I didn't get accepted to 7 different applications to medical school, I figured maybe I better think this over.
It's a good thing, he would have been singing to them or,
Telling them a good story.
Well, that's not a bad way of doctoring people. I don't
I know.
Healing people through story and song. That would be awesome. That would be amazing.
Yeah. So I missed all that blood. Yeah.
Gosh, you miss it?
Missed all the blood, yeah.
So do you try and find road accidents to make up for that?
I do like graphic stories of blood and guts.
Oh, he does. Oh my God.
We both had science backgrounds, but
I had a double major, biology and psychology, and then a master's in social.
But also we have the common background of there was an artist yearning to be free, and so we ended up finding each other and exploring the artistic part of ourselves.
So what drew you to folk and fairy tales as opposed to personal narrative and stuff like that? Was that your interest in the ethnical music that you were looking at and the ethnical dance that you were studying and performing? So
remember, we didn't know what storytelling was. So the only thing we could think about must be, stories from our culture and folktales, myths and legends. So we somehow just automatically went there. We didn't really know there was a movement starting for personal stories. And even once it got entrenched and folktales started to be pushed out, and personal stories were it, as an Asian American, as a minority group, we didn't think in our colonized thinking process that anyone would be interested in our stories.
Yeah, and part of Asian and Asian American culture is that you don't talk about yourself. It's somewhat rude.
It's private, and
don't bring attention to yourself.
Yeah.
So I want to pedal back on that just a little bit. So what you felt like you couldn't talk about what you did and yourselves and your culture because of colonization, or because of your culture is a lot more humble than the white American culture that likes to brag a lot?
I think it's both. The fact that we have been told not to talk about oneself out in public, plus being a minority in this American white culture, majority culture, that you're not even visible. There's a whole phenomenon which I talk about in a personal story I do about, I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana. And so during the apartheid times, there was only black and white. So where was I supposed to be? Where was I supposed to sit on a bus or a streetcar? What public bathroom was I supposed to go to? And it was very clear that if I wanted to be respected, I needed to identify as white. So that made me invisible as an Asian, right?
Wow.
So I think, so I think that it's both, that we're taught not to hang our dirty laundry out, but on top of it, we have been made to feel less. I had a psychotherapist for myself, and he once told me that I would always be seen as a second-class citizen, which just shocked me. But that's the kind of message that you get. So why would anyone be interested in our stories? Of course, we were wrong.
Yeah.
But it took all these years to see that it's not true, that people are interested.
Yeah.
Very interested. I like Anansi stories. There are some African stories that I like, but Japanese and Chinese stories, they're kind of like my next favorite after the European stories.
Yeah.
Don't tell anyone. But the thing that I like about those stories is that they're so varied, and there are some really wonderful, bawdy tales that I was going through this one book of Japanese folk tales, and I'm like, I can't tell any of these to kids, and they're amazing stories. They're such good stories.
Yeah.
This whole invisibility. I didn't grow up in the States, right? And I know that the racism here, and the colonialization, it seems, at least to me, a lot more prevalent over here than it ever was in the UK. And maybe I just didn't grow up in the right place to notice it, and I didn't hang out with the right people to notice it. But it's I didn't learn about the Japanese internment camps until I was over here in the States, and that was just like, what?
Right. We aren't even taught that. I wasn't taught that in any history class when I was in school.
Right.
Yeah.
It was
none of that's in the history books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So much of growing up in America as an Asian person, you don't realize that you're sitting on a groundswell or foundation of decades and centuries of racism.
Centuries,
it was systematic from the get,
mm-hmm.
about property ownership, about who's considered a human being,
who could be a
not.
Citizen, who could vote.
Yeah,
none of that was able for the Chinese.
Yeah, so the idea of invisibility has been a very cultivated growth over the last 300-400 years of America.
Except that in my now personal story, I say, but except that we are very visible when it comes to racism. So the minute they see our face, they consider us foreigners still, even though my family's been here since 1850. But I'm still considered not an American. And America does export that kind of thinking all over the world through their movies and their magazines and commercials. And it's changing now. But when I went to China for the first time, my father's brother's wife asked, if I'm the American relative, why am I not having blonde hair and blue eyes? So that's how strong
The
export of America saying who is really American. And we know that with this movement going on right now of, we will not be replaced by Jews. We will not be replaced, that the white supremacists are saying the same thing, that this is who's real American, and the rest of you don't really belong here. You should go back where you came from. And I think the difference between the UK and America in terms of racism is that America from the get became multicultural versus England.
Well, I don't know. UK they were colonists for a long time.
Yeah, but did they live in England?
But they brought in all that color.
Well, not for a
longer
long
than the
time.
US did.
Not for a long time, I don't think.
No, we started it. I got to take ownership of this.
Yeah, you started the colonization.
The Dutch and the French and the Spanish and the English,
right.
The British.
But did you bring people of color, that many, to the UK?
Well, that's how the empire works. Yeah, the empire don't do that.
I mean, I grew up in the 70s, and there was a huge Indian population in my town, and there were certain pockets of England where there were a majority of people from India or from Pakistan, right?
Yeah, but that's the 70s. That's
or Hong Kong, anywhere where there was
the 70s. We're talking 1800s, 1700s here in America.
Right. I mean, yes. So a lot of people. I don't know about people from Asia, right? But I know that a lot of not African Americans, but a lot of Africans were brought over. People from the continent of Africa were brought over, and a lot of people from the West Indies.
Yeah. And Hong Kong provided a pipeline too. So Hong Kong brought Chinese into UK.
So why do you think it's not the same?
Well, I don't know. I just wonder if I grew up in a small town, but it was fairly cosmopolitan. It was the majority was white, I have to say, right? But I don't know. Maybe I just never saw the racism.
Yeah,
it kind of frightens me.
Yeah,
when I first came over here, I saw it, and you hear about it, right? And the only kind of like racism that I saw and witnessed, there was a lot of anti feeling towards people from India. People from the continent of Africa, there were pockets of people that were like hateful, and we did have like the neo-Nazis, and I went to those rallies to spit on them and throw things at them and all that kind of stuff. But it was very isolated. I didn't grow up in London, where all the big culture was, and I didn't move into London until I was in my 20s. And the only time I actually felt threatened was by a white guy, ironically.
No.
I was in Brixton, which was a very, don't go there kind of place. It was a very violent, dangerous place to go. And I was visiting a friend in Brixton, and I was being followed by this white guy, and I hooked up with this family of people of color and said, I'm being followed by this guy. I think he's got nefarious ideas on his mind to do something to me. Can I walk with you at least for a ways? And they're like, yeah, sure, And I jumped on a double-decker bus that was moving because it had an open back. They don't have those anymore because of people tried to jump on the back like me at midnight or whatever time it was in the morning. Oh. And the guy was chasing after the bus, trying to get on it as well.
Oh my gosh!
And that was,
wow.
I've never felt threatened by people of color. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I think you'd have to ask a person of color about the racism, because because you didn't see it doesn't mean it wasn't there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's very true.
To the question of why maybe it's more polarized, racialized in America, is that you look back at the history. There was a time before emancipation, right? Slavery was part of the economy. And of course, it happened in other countries as well. But the minute you divided that with North and South, Confederate and Union, and created laws that made it illegal, you sort of put this riff in a part that was so much a part of American life. These people are property. They're
Yeah, there was
animals.
a law
And
that
so
said
when
they
you
were
separated
property.
that and you
Right.
ignited,
No, I've read.
you ignited the Klan and all the Jim Crow laws. There was a certain galvanization of sort of a racialized tempering of what's
And
going
it was
on.
in our government. I mean, that's our government.
Yeah.
Was that.
Yeah.
So
So when you think about the movement of civil rights in the 60s, that was a huge upheaval for the powers that be. And then since here it is 50 years later, it's still sitting on this rock bed of crystallized racism that hasn't reckoned with itself, or in denial, which is even worse.
yeah.
Yeah. Maybe in 1,000 years there will be a folktale about all of this.
Yeah.
and
But
about
we
the
actually,
mess.
when we look for stories with folktales, we look for the stories that have these social
These kinds of messages.
social messages about racism or bigotry or
Mhm. Not
arrogance.
seeing people as people, but we have a great one from Korea called "The Man Who Planted Onions." One of the first stories we did, which is a time when people could not tell the difference between cows and people. So people would sometimes end up eating people instead of cows. And so the way that the story works through is, being able to see people as people and not just a piece of meat.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of that whole racial thing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Wow. So what kind of you didn't have any training in storytelling, really. You just went for it, made it up as you went along.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, our theater experience helped. And also, because she's a dancer, I'm a musician, we looked at language in different ways. We looked at language as movement and as kinesthetics and rhythm. And from a musical point of view, language has its temper, it has its tempo, it has its timbres, punctuations and dynamics. So we're looking at storytelling language more dimensionally rather than just
and I don't think we did
language.
it consciously. Oh, let's do this timbre and this. It's just because that's who we were and what we had been doing for years. It just came to be that way.
Yeah.
It worked rather magically, actually. It's not like we planned it, right?
Serendipitous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I find that a lot of storytellers don't necessarily choose storytelling, but storytelling chooses
Yes.
them.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that it sounds like it's the same for you as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely is a culture, a cult.
Yeah,
Yes,
no,
cult
we
is
would-
probably a better word for it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we would never, like when I was growing up, I wanted to be a dancer. I wanted to be in musicals. Of course, there were no Asians for that. But I don't think I would ever said I want to be a storyteller because I didn't know what it was.
Right.
Even as an adult, I didn't know it wasn't
People
until
still don't know what it is.
Yeah, right.
We know what it is,
That's
but
true.
like the general. Right. I mean, I
That's
think this is like one of the biggest problems that we have with
Yes.
getting audiences, bums on seats,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that people don't, because the word is so bantered around. It's like,
Now it
Steven
is,
Spielberg
yes.
is a storyteller. He's like, no, he's not. He's a director.
right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Oh, this
and-
musician is here. The lyrics is a storyteller, no? Or this
Yeah.
author is a great storyteller, but it's a written story. It's not the oral tradition. Yeah.
It's very different. It's
Yeah.
hugely.
Yeah.
I think it's hugely different.
It's very
Yeah.
different indeed.
I guess the question from our profession and for all professional storytellers is how, given that buzz is out there and everyone's using that word, why not ride the wave and figure out how to say, well,
Yeah,
then
but
here's
we're the real storytellers.
use the authentic ones, or you
Yes.
thought that movie was good. Will you hear it between your ears?
Yeah. All right. In front of a in-person live audience. Yeah.
Yeah.
If that ever happens again.
Yeah.
When that happens again. Yeah. So how did you find your voice? Was it organic the way that it came out?
Yeah.
I think so. Because there's two of us,
Right.
and we have our own, male, female, yin yang bantering that goes on even in our personal life. Sometimes Nancy will start a sentence and I fill in the word, or vice versa. So
So
a
it's
lot of
not
it shows up in our
trouble for that?
scripts. What was that?
What?
I said you don't get into trouble for that, Robert.
Always.
No, actually, thank goodness, because our brain cells are starting to, die here. So thank goodness you can remember that name and that word for me, or, I can remember what you're supposed to do. Remember you said, so, but in terms of we write our stories. Robert does the research. So all he reads are folk tales and legends and myths. He's got a huge library of all these storytelling books from
the Asian
around Asia.
Wow.
So he does the research. He marks them with stars, which ones are 4, which ones are 1. So then I look at the 4s, and we come upon the one we're going to work on next. And then either I will start the script or he will start the script. And then we send it back and forth, changing and editing and adding and deepening and enhancing until we've come to the one that we think this is it. And then even as we start memorizing and working out the movements and the staging, it changes. So it becomes just in a very organic flow of this back and forth, finding the one.
Yeah, and because we're thinking in terms of rhythm and music and sound and movement
and message.
Yeah, sometimes we'll see a scene or we'll think of a scene in the script, and it might be a wave, or it might be, a physical thrust of a rock jutting up, and that kind of physicality guides what we should do with our bodies. So we're thinking already kinesthetically.
Right. And also there are times when, because we are movement, that instead of describing something or saying something, we just do it, so it takes away the wording. So there's a pause, there's the need for silence, but something else happening, and before the words start flowing again. So it is very back and forth until we find the one.
Yeah. And do you, Nancy, do most of the choreography with your dancing background, or is that an organic thing as well? Based on what Robert was saying about the pushing up of the rock or the waves and stuff like that.
No, I started, and then because of my dance and choreography background, but Robert is a natural mover, and in time he learned everything I know, so he also can absolutely do the choreography himself if he wanted. And he does with his solo pieces. I don't have anything to do with his solo pieces. He does all the choreography, the gestures, everything, the writing. It's so he's learned a lot from his elder here.
That's right. Respect your elders. But also with the two of us.
Really? So Nancy, you're the older of the two?
I'm 10 years older than he is.
Nice.
Yeah.
She robbed the cradle, that's for sure. Getting back to this thing of how we choreograph, is that between the two of us, there is also what I call a center of gravity. So we know that if I go forward, she goes back, vice versa. If I go high, she goes low. So these are sort of choreographic sensibilities that we know.
Staging and
it's like automatic.
Yeah,
for us
now it is. Yeah.
That's so cool. How long did it take you to get to that point where it was automatic?
Probably soon, 5 years. No, I don't know.
Yeah. But also
So
back to the thing.
You created Eth-No-Tec in 1982, is that right?
Well, we started in 1981 with the Kulingtang.
Okay.
And then we were betrayed in that. And so then we started doing performance art in 1985.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really interesting. We merged our contemporary and traditional and did interesting pieces, I must say. And then in 1987 is when someone asked us to do a story.
Yeah. You think trying to get a storytelling gig is hard? Try to get a performance art gig.
No, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what were those early performance pieces like then? The ones that you were trying hard to get work for?
Oh, like the performance art pieces?
Performing? Yeah. Oh, they were fun, actually. So one of the main pieces that we started with was taking that betrayal that happened with the Kulingtang, our company and school, and
we turned it into performance art.
Yeah, it was.
But all the things, the core message is about naivete or being blind to when people stab you in the back, you're just blind to it.
So there's one point at which I'm going, da, 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 and Robert's hey, hitting me on the head and with drum beats, with the paper towel,
Empty cardboard dowels.
And so there's this night sun and he's hitting me over the head and I'm going, because we were so naive and thought everything was so nice. In the meantime, someone stabbing is in the back. So it's a really, we wore white face in the beginning, even in storytelling. I don't know if you've seen those old pictures, but we wore white makeup like no theater or like Chinese opera.
Oh,
and
right.
so,
Okay.
so your expressions are really magnified that way. And so there's all this kind of, using
tableau stylized movement.
Yeah, we had this cloth that we got tangled up in, and what else?
It was wacky stuff.
It's really wacky, but it went
Did you get good
over.
reviews for it? I mean, obviously people came to see it.
Yeah, they did.
No, I think one critic said, if we only knew what they were doing.
No,
The title's good.
but
If we only knew.
another critic said crystallized. But she loved it. She said it was a crystallized.
She got it.
Yeah, she got it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing how a friend of mine who did some photography of this huge old mill that was falling down, she and I got permission to go in it and photograph it. And so when she came to do her installation of photography, I wasn't part of that part. I was just taking pictures for my own pleasure. But she did these teeny tiny little like 4x4 prints, and one of the critics was like, "This is such a huge building, and it's such a beautiful old building that is collapsing. Why did she do such small pictures?" And it's like, well, that's the whole point.
That's the point. Yeah. That's the statement right there.
Because it's a big building, you do small pictures. You don't have to, but that's what she chose to do, and it's like an artistic expression, right?
Yes, yes.
Some of these pictures have these, these wonderful details of little things that are going on, and some people get art and some people don't.
Yeah,
Some people get certain kinds of art and not other kinds. It's,
right,
it's
absolutely.
kind of-
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think is the most important part of the job for you?
Wow. Well, from an artistic point of view,
Administratively, probably the administration of it. Yeah,
Getting the work to come in.
Huh?
Getting the work to come in.
Yeah, marketing and I think it's the most fun is finding the story and creating the way we're going to do it. The worst part is memorizing and
marketing.
Yeah.
But I would say, for people who are listening to this, the most important thing is your art. You got to have that. You got to have the creativity. It's got to be. You got to strive for the best art.
Mm-hmm.
You won't know until you're in front of an audience. So then the second question comes: get an audience. How do you do that? Well, you got to market yourself. So it's there's many ways where people can increase their artistic. First, they have to have some artistic talent. That's the challenge, because some people don't recognize that they have no talent. And there's that cultural thing, at least in the storytelling world, everybody's a storyteller. Well, that could be our downfall. Not everyone.
Yeah. I mean, I do get that. It's like everybody can be a storyteller, but
Well,
not everyone is not everyone can make a living doing it. Right?
Yeah, I mean, but no, there are people who can tell little stories, and they're just kind of like anecdotes, which is not storytelling. So, but for us, it's only now all the administration, because we've been a nonprofit. So there's a lot of the board meetings, and there's getting, the marketing out, and then the business getting the taxes,
and we create projects,
all that stuff, right? And keeping track of your mailing list and who wants this, and sending out products, and it's a lot of administration. But we also were very lucky to be in the right place at the right time when diversity was being asked of many organizations that they needed to diversify. And we were the diversity. So we came in at a time when they needed to bring in people of color.
Yeah.
So we didn't have to do a lot of marketing or, out there in the beginning.
Yeah.
I remember we went to Jonesboro once just to see what, see the festival. And we went up to Susan O'Connor and asked her, how do we get on the new voices stage or the exchange place? And she looked at it and she says, no, I've heard of you and you are way too good for that. We're going to just put you on the stage as a featured.
Nice.
Yeah, we didn't have to do
The door was open.
anything because and then we saw behind her, there was a postcard from Judith Black about us. And
People were talking. Yeah.
So people were talking.
Yeah. But again, it is the artistry. 'Cause, you know,
It felt so good. We were we were surprised, very surprised.
yeah, because you could have, you could be the flavor of the month, but if your artistry is not good,
Yeah, they won't
that's
have
why
you
we say
back.
presenters don't put someone bad just because they're the flavor of the month. Don't put them up there because it just weakens the whole thing. So
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
yeah, gotta have good art.
Yeah, I've seen that happen with some smaller festivals where they have, they're doing a good job, but they don't. The caliber of storyteller is kind of iffy,
Yes.
and so the attendance is iffy because nobody
Yes.
really knows what to expect,
Yes.
and you can't run a successful event, I don't think, unless you've got solid talent. And
Yeah.
you're a really good example. I think a really good example. So you're welcome. Could you describe your creative process? I mean, you said that Robert is
The research.
the
Story,
researcher, but so and you've got this huge collection. But have you also, for those people that have no idea who you might be, which is probably the people that listen to this is going to be nobody. They're all going to know who you are. Robert, you're Japanese Filipino, right? That's your cultural heritage. And Nancy, your cultural heritage is Chinese, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm assuming that you've been to all of these places and
We've
more.
traveled, yeah.
Yeah, and have you collected many of these stories orally, or is most of your work?
Some places where we travel, we always listen for where the stories are. Of course, in India, there was a wealth of stories there, and China, the traditional storytelling village we went to, had some stories. And of course,
Korea.
Yeah. So, but most of our research has been here in the States, looking at books or listening to other people from those communities tell us versions of that. So one of the processes, if you hear a story from a culture that's different from your own, or even if it's of your own, is try to find as many variants as you can, because somewhere in there, they also have that phrase, a story will call to you as an artist. You'll know which story to choose. Well, that may be so, but on the other hand, a story has a cloud of stories around it. And there's variations even within that cloud of that one story. So like we've heard stories, the story of the turtle who wants to escape this pond, he bites on the stick, and the stork and the cranes carry him up into the world. That's a very ancient story.
It's all over Asia.
It's all over Abenaki, Native American peoples. It's found in Nigeria. It's found in Vietnam and India.
Persia,
so it must be a
probably.
very ancient story. And so if you can find all the variants in there, somewhere in there you'll find that point that calls to you, even within one motif of a story. The next process I do work with both the outline, what are the key elements in there, as well as I like story maps because I draw, and so I'll draw circles with words in them and arrows, and it's no one can understand it. It looks like hieroglyphics, but I understand what the flow of that arc is. Or I'll draw an arc line and put the kernels of thought in there, and then drop down with the key elements and the bullet points that need to be told in each of those arc parts of the story.
And I just sit down and write.
Yeah, she just right.
Yeah. So Robert gives you kind of like a little map, and you try
I can't
figure it out.
No, I can't figure out his maps. I don't think that way. He's much more visual in that way. I'm just straight ahead. I sit down and go, so I read the story and go, okay. And I just start writing.
Yeah. And actually, with my eyes going bad, I don't like to read that much. I like to draw pictures. Tell me what the story is and what it's about. And I'll tell you a story. But so when she sent me a script and it's, blah, 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 did you read the script? I read a few words. I scanned it.
Let me get you. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's when you need to record it for him, Nancy. So
Yeah, as I read it to him now.
Yeah, or audio.
I
That's
mean,
another process.
he could wear his glasses, but
that's true.
That's too easy. But also, yeah, audio process. I hear things with audio, so I'll record a story and listen to it. Nancy, again,
That's
it's
what I
all
do. Yeah,
text.
yeah.
Yeah. So now,
Right.
here's the thing about the folk tales versus personal stories. In the recent years, we've been doing historic pieces and lengthier personal stories, and because that's Nancy's department, she actually is able to write, plays like 75-minute story. And I feel much safer in a 5 to 10 minute motif. Give me that one, I can carve that out.
I'm with you, Robert.
I can do both. I just
You're-
recently took two different sources of a Persian tale and I put them together. So I can do
You can.
that.
You can. I can't do both. You can do both. Yeah, we're writing a
Talented
story
lady.
right
You
now.
got yourself a good one, Robert.
Yeah. The challenge right now is we are writing the story
Of our
Of
40
Eth-No-Tec.
years.
40 years we've
together.
been doing this. So we are actually
Wow.
putting that into a play.
Which is driving
is-
us crazy.
Yeah, it's long overdue. We've had over a year to work on it, and I've done my darndest to procrastinate for a year, and now it's down to the last month or two, and it's going up to the public
In June.
in June, and
Online.
we're sweating bullets and bricks.
Yeah. But I think I've written the
Okay.
script now, and now we have to figure out where to put the multimedia parts to it, little bits of our old times and our old folk tales, and then whatever. It's photos.
Right.
It's a blend. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
we'll
title
see.
is based on
It's
the first
so
story
hard.
we did. Actually, the first performance art story. We're titling this new piece called "If We Only Knew."
Mhm.
Betrothed, betrayed, bewildered, and blessed.
I like that title.
Yeah,
That's really
yeah.
cool.
If we only knew. Isn't that the truth, though? When we've
Yeah.
been done to, and someone says something and we didn't respond, and then after the fact, you think, oh, I should have said this. If
Yeah.
we only knew.
Or accidents that we could have avoided, or miracles that we missed because it was right under our nose and we didn't grab it when it was right there.
If we only knew.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a few of those. I think we all. Have
Oh,
those.
yeah. All of us,
Yeah.
for sure.
So, how do you feed yourselves artistically?
Okay. Artistically, how do we feed ourselves?
I read novels. I read stories, and it's
Kind of
movies.
What kind
kind of
of novels?
I read mysteries. I read like Shantaram. Have you ever read Shantaram?
I have no-
Brilliant languaging. It's 1,000 pages, and I read it twice because it was so
Wow.
gorgeous.
I do like nice writing. It's
Yeah.
things.
Oh.
It's, you latch onto a book and you find that the language that is used is just
It's
delightful.
so beautiful.
I found this kids writer from the 60s, Leon Garfield. He did these historical type mystery pieces set in Victorian sort of England, and semi-pirate stories, but adventure stories. And the language that he used, I tried to get some of my nephews. I mean, now they're grown up, but when they were little, and I was like, you got to read these, because the one, Paul, he was an avid reader, and I just like, read this book, the language is so good, and he just
Yeah.
couldn't get into it. He just
Oh.
couldn't get into it.
Mm.
It broke my heart.
Yes. I remember buying Lawrence Yep, a whole bunch of his young people's stories too, and books, and sending them all to my nieces and nephews for Christmas. Yeah.
Fun when you do that.
Yeah.
Find somebody that you like, and then you send it on to family members
Yeah.
and friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So Nancy's inspiration is reading.
And movies
Yeah,
and
and like I said, I don't read enough. If I do read, it's folktales and myths and legends. And so
music.
it's been a long time because we've been working on all these administration projects.
Ugh.
So I'm yearning to get back into some books,
And music.
folktales.
How about your
And also,
music?
music is my first.
But-
my
but he's
first art
also
form.
an amazing visual artist, and we need to start using some of his images that he's drawn. So, I mean, I think mostly for you, Robert, your artistic stuff is all in your head. I mean, he's just very creative. He's, I call him my little genius.
But I think one of the challenges is because we've made a lifestyle and a profession out of creativity that sometimes even like with storytelling, we're always thinking in this rut called, the 7-minute oleo, the 15-minute time slot, the 30-minute oleo set. And it kind of takes the fun out of it sometimes.
I don't think that. I just write. And if it happens to be 10 minutes, great. If it happens to be 5 minutes, great. That'll fit into a 5-minute thing. I don't put that kind of frame on
Well, okay. So she said I should do my drawings. So do the drawings so then you can sell them.
No, I didn't say sell them. You do. I don't say that. So it's just that I think that the artistic creative muscle is pretty much already there. So we don't feel like we have to do outside stuff to get our artistic stuff going. Like people talk about, I'm sitting in front of a blank page, or I, don't want to start. But for me, it just starts to flow.
Yeah.
And you too, when you draw, you can just do anything.
Yeah.
Same with music. He doesn't read music. He plays by ear, and he just starts to make stuff. So it's already a well-honed muscle after we are very old. So we've been doing it a long time.
But the pandemic has offered a really strange, very bizarre environment, kind of a limbo zone.
Yeah.
We're kind of, for the first part of the first few months of it, we were like floating on what the hell?
Yay, it's a vacation.
It's a vacation. All the gigs are canceled. No more money's coming in.
We don't have to fly anywhere.
Yeah. And then it's like.
That is the complete opposite of how I felt. I was just like, oh, crud. What am I going to do?
Well, then, of course, we get on the technology curve, and then all of our time and thought gets gobbled up in how to set up your studio.
Yeah, we have a studio here that Robert constructed. It's very
nice.
It's elaborate, yeah. So then that every other storyteller and musician and dancer and theater company and poet are also streaming. So now how are we going to make a mark in there? Yeah. Luckily, we've been doing it long enough. We have a brand, so we don't have to work that
with
hard.
Constituents that love us,
yeah. And at the same time, because
but it's too much.
The technology and the platforms are always changing. That you have to keep up just to be above, just to get your nose above the water. So, like I understand how Twitter and Instagram work. We have an account. We don't use it. And partly is that if I have yet another minute to spend my human energy, I don't want to be staring at a screen and doing this.
But all our friends are saying, watch me on. I'm performing at. And it's like, I can't do it.
Yeah, there's Zoom overload.
Because, the festival in Florida, you can now watch it, but you couldn't go to it. You really wouldn't fly across the country to go to it, but now you can see it. You can see the one in England. You can see the one in Austria. You can see. It's too much. It's just too much.
It is. I mean, it's a wonderful gift that we've been given that we can do this.
Yes.
Because I'm seeing people that I've wanted to see, I haven't been able to because I don't have the budget to fly out everywhere and
exactly.
And from a performing point of view too,
there is so much of it. It's kind of like. I'm going to pick and choose. And what am I going to watch?
And then you feel guilty.
I'm going to watch the Avengers.
There's better production quality in that.
Yes.
I know. And then you feel guilty that I'm so sorry I couldn't watch your show. Yeah. And Robert gets so exhausted by the end of the day. He just wants to go into the steam room that we have here. And then lie on his massage thing, those things that you can put in your car. He brought it away from the car and put it on the floor. And he doesn't want anything to do with anything else. And I said, no, you have to stop at 6. We have to have a life together, okay?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, I know. It's important. And, that's the other thing with our audiences too, as all the if you're doing a lot of work as a storyteller in schools, all these years we've been saying, get off that TV. Don't stare at the screen. See a live show. And now look what the hell we're doing.
I know, right?
Log on to my show.
Not
Stare
theirs,
at
but
the
mine.
screen.
Stop watching theirs. Watch me.
We're crazy.
I know, right? It is.
You
It
know,
is.
and at the same time, in a weird way, I really do like just staying home and doing a show and pushing a button, because I know we figured out in 40 years we've performed to over 1 million people, and so the live show thing, we've been there, we've done that,
We love it.
and we
but
still love it. But I tell you,
It's
pushing
easy.
a button is so much easier than booking a plane and a hotel and a car rental, getting lost, and finding the school and dealing with the janitor, messing up the floor, and then moving on to the next school like that for months and months at a time.
And not really being connected to a community, really. You enter,
Yeah.
you're on stage, you leave. The audience leaves, they have to go back to their classrooms. And it's like, oh, this is not very.
Yeah, but who knows where it's
satisfying.
going? I think we'll always have some kind of hybrid. And like I said, it is an opportunity to perform to audiences that normally couldn't see you. Homeschoolers,
Oh, and we can
people
see
in other
them.
countries, depending on the time zone.
We just watched the Naquali.
Naquali, yeah.
Nisqually, from Persia. I mean, Iran.
Yeah, they were based in Toronto,
Toronto,
but it's a whole other storytelling tradition we knew nothing
Oh my
about,
gosh,
Iranian
it was
storytelling.
wonderful.
Do you think that folk and fairy tales can help dismantle any kind of intolerance, either uniquely or otherwise?
Yeah.
I think the message is there, but to carry out the action that goes with the message, it takes a whole other involvement. So, for example, the very first personal story that we did was in 2001 or 2000, and it was about an atom bomb survivor's journey from rage and revenge to forgiveness and reconciliation. Now, people can learn about that. Forgiveness is very difficult. So you can know about forgiveness, but doesn't mean you can. But at one point, being a psychotherapist, we performed it in a middle school or high school. I think it was high school. Yeah. And then I did a 10-week session with them. With the counselors chose 10 kids that were either abused or neglected from home and were having these kind of problems, youth at risk. And I did 10 sessions with them around forgiveness and other modalities, and help them process that so that they could move on from what they were experiencing. Mm-hmm. So that was that's like an action, and it did decline their bad behavior, it turned out. So it was very, very useful. But how many schools are going to have you do that?
But back to this question, which is about folktales and fairy tales.
Yeah, they can help.
We've had experiences where we told a Chinese folktale about telling the truth amidst the courage at your own risk to tell the courage to tell the truth. And after we told that story, we were receiving reports that several young girls were reporting their molestations. And so, some folktales, and I think because why folktales and myths and fairy tales, they act differently on the human brain. I mean, they could probably hook up wires and say, wow, when you hear a metaphor or a folktale, it can enter the brain in a very different way, because it's not about facts and about, information. It's about, it's symbolic thinking, and you can safely address an issue or a situation, but it's not,
but it only
because it's imaginary. A person listening to it can softly enter that imagination, and it can touch them, and they don't feel threatened because, it's just a story. But wow, it's an interesting story. Oh, wow, I can relate to that. That's like what happened to me.
But it does take the listener, a certain kind of listener who will take that information and actually use it to create change in their lives.
Right.
So
process it as well, right?
Yeah, and process, because it just hearing the story and then letting it go isn't going to help.
Right.
So but it's like anything. Everything has a potential of creating some impact in your life, and either you take it and run with it or you don't.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's why I think a storyteller is telling folktales and myths. There could be a sort of a soft responsibility that when you're about to launch a story, or even after you've launched it, afterwards, there's a certain framing that introduces either a question of investigation or inquiry. So when the person's listening to it, they go, "Oh, that's about this or about something that I've experienced." So when a person tells you a story, the storyteller can say, "And how many of you have had that experience?" And the people go like this, the kids go like that, or how many of you experience a bully in your life? Well, isn't that just like that bully in the story? And how did he resolve that? How did they find a way to make it peaceful?
So then it's really important to have some discussion. And I know sometimes in the storytelling world, people feel that you shouldn't have to do that, right? That you shouldn't have to say anything after a story, that the story is the story and that's how it will be received and it's up to the person. But some people need a little help with it.
Because everyone has different relationships to symbols.
And we tell the story of, this Chinese story called The Long-Haired Girl, and about the courage to tell the truth, even under severe threats. When we tell that story, and then we tell the story about these middle school girls who went to their counselor afterwards and to report their molestations at home. Then there was a woman who came up to me at Jonesboro who said, I'm going to confront my molester now. Wow. So it can go
reverberate.
Yeah, like that. And who knows how many people have taken a folktale, heard it deeply, and have made a change in their lives. Those are things we won't know unless they communicate to us.
Right. Do you think in this day and age where there are, I know of librarians that have come out of library science school with their degrees and everything, and they don't know the story of Little Red Riding Hood. Do you think some of the prompts that we need to give kids, that maybe we didn't need to do in the olden days because everybody knew these stories, but now we do need to offer these prompts because people haven't heard these stories before?
Wow.
Yeah, curriculum guides, huh? Robert's we've been working on.
Well, also, when people are either teachers in a classroom or even librarians, they have a broad selection now of Little Red Riding Hood. It can be Lompopo, the Chinese version of Little Red Riding Hood.
Same with Cinderella, could be the Korean version.
Yeah, so they're seeing that even within some of these archetypes, that there are, like I said, it's a cloud.
The cloud, yeah.
Huh. So, but that's the reason why folktales came into such an existence and with such strength, is because they were in response to something that happened to someone.
Yeah.
And this was a way of teaching them about what happened and how to resolve it.
Yeah. Are you familiar with the Indian Panchantra?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. You probably have jackals. Yeah. And that was interesting because those are all anecdotes and metaphors of animals, but it would teach the nobility how to maneuver politically based on these metaphors.
When you read them together in the Panchatantra, it's there's not always a clear-cut answer. There's not always a this is right and this is wrong.
Right.
Sometimes it's kind of like, well, this is kind of right. Also, it could be wrong, and the wrong that's also kind of right if.
Yeah.
It's really ambiguous in some places, and it really you have to really think about what are the consequences of these actions and like how could it have been done differently. They're phenomenal stories.
Yeah.
And
and in America, everything got Walt Disneyed, and like the happy ever after endings. And so when I would hear African or read an African
or even some of the Asian stories,
and it would end up like, oh my God, the good guy lost. It's really a cautionary tale, things don't happen happily ever after all the time. And the thing is to learn from other people's mistakes and your own mistakes.
Yeah. And of course, when we're looking at the Pan-Asian world of folktales and myths, there are certain parts within that bandwidth. For example, in West Asia, places like the stands, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, a thief is an archetype, and it's to be, it's the virtue. There's a virtue in a thief because he has skills, and sometimes he does steal from the Padishah or from the Caliph, but it still hits a life of crime.
That's
And so,
right,
like
yeah.
it really messes with your Western values. Like, wait a minute, that's a criminal.
Yeah. No, I love those kinds of stories. It's like, hang on, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And it's like, what's right and what's wrong, and like, what lens are we looking through to see the story? And cultural lens, but also our personal lens. Like, what background do we come from that has given us this point of view that we're looking at everything?
And it changes too. Like, in our lifetime, the attention given to the environment and to the biosphere. So then we come across a story from Laos where the justice of it is that the farmer pounds a wooden stake up the ass of a tiger.
Oh God!
And everyone's supposed to cheer the farmer. He saved his life, but no,
For me, it's like
an endangered species. Don't do that to the tiger.
Right. But when that story was being told, it wasn't an endangered species.
That's right.
But even so, cruel.
Yes,
It is true. I agree with that. Yeah.
I don't think that. I refuse to have that story be told.
Okay. So, is there a storyteller who? Well, actually, I've got a few more questions now because this one just popped in my mind. That's sprung off a whole bunch of other questions. Is there anyone that you felt was, you looked up to as a storyteller, or were you so busy just doing what you were doing that you kind of like you saw these other storytellers, but they weren't really mentors, as it were? Or did you have mentors?
I have favorites.
We don't have mentors. I mean, I had a dance choreographer, theater mentor, but we have definitely have storytellers that we look up to, highly prize.
Well, to get inspired by too, like
Laura Sims.
Laura Sims is one. J. O'Callahan. But what is we inspired about them? So with Laura, it's the elegance of her mythic stories or long stories, and being able to launch into this imaginary world, but then be able to step sideways without interfering the momentum of the story, and doing a kind of a quirky side parenthetical commentary, and then jumping back into the river
to engage the audience, and then go back into it.
With Jay, it's a regal presentation. It's majestic, not only because of his length, but also his playfulness too. So it's a really interesting thing between being this sort of royalty, but also there's a little kid in him that I really appreciate. Bill Harley, I've always enjoyed his whimsy and his humor. It just it tickles me. So when I see these people,
and
Heather
Forrest. I love her voice, and I love the way she can be speaking and suddenly she's singing, and there's no transition. It just flows and melts back and forth.
Well, of course, then, a lot of these storytellers, we know them not only from their artistic elegance.
Diane Edgecombe.
Yeah.
Diane Edgecombe. My gosh, she's wonderful. Oh, she's so sweet.
She's the characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know there's so many of them. We can't name them all because we'd be here for a while.
Yeah. But what we look for or get inspiration by is their use of language, the eloquence of it. I don't know how to describe it. Again, it's tones of musicality, rhythm. Of course, when they're using just words, it's how they describe the imagery.
Their words,
the choice of imagery, which then is color and shape and composition, but in the imagination.
Right. That's so cool. I like that. Thank you for answering that question. All right, last question. What would your favorite breakfast be? Where would you like to eat your favorite breakfast, and with whom?
Oh, okay. Let's see.
Oh,
besides each other.
Well, I'm not gonna go down that road. Okay. You can choose whoever you want.
Okay. Well,
I always know what I want to eat.
Yeah.
So you go first, Nancy.
Well, oh gosh, I love waffles and pancakes, but not pancakes, but crepes. But I also like a veggie scramble, soft veggie scramble, mushrooms and green peppers and tomatoes and onions and mushrooms, and maybe a chicken sausage. And I would love it by either in a Japanese tea garden with all the Japanese blossom trees, or at the Mediterranean, somewhere on the Mediterranean.
So hot and sunny, basically, by the sound of it.
Not too hot, just
Not too hot.
perfect. 70s with a balmy breeze, or Hawaii would do. You're going to take us there?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would have it with Robert and probably who else? I don't know.
All those people we named. Laura and
Would you think Barbara Streisand would join us? Or
I'll go for Stevie Wonder.
Oh yeah, Stevie Wonder.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
There you go.
They're my main. Stevie Wonder and Santana. They're my boys. So my breakfast would be a strange mix of European continental breakfast with several varieties of cheese and breads, good broth, and lox and bagels with cream cheese and capers and red onions and tomatoes, mixed with a greasy spoon Filipino down-home inner city Filipino cafe that serves longanisa, which is this very sweet sausage on a bed of rice with eggs that are very gooey. I love gooiness in eggs. And that strange mix of European continental and Filipino greasy spoon with that decor would be actually on the deck of where we are now on Orcas Island in the Northwest, on our deck looking out at the mountains and the water. Sea, and with a little wisp of Canada over the edge there. And it would be with Nancy.
Yeah,
I'm going to trade my chicken sausage for the longanisa.
All right, you can do that because it's all imaginary anyway.
Yeah.
Robert, Nancy, Eth-No-Tec, thank you so much indeed for joining me and being a part of my conversations with storytellers. I so appreciate your time. I so appreciate
Thank you.
both of your artistries and your humour and the work that you do. It's wonderful.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thanks for the work you're doing, too.
Thank you. Yes.
This was fun for me, and I hope it was fun for you too. Robert and Nancy seem a match made in heaven, both personally and professionally. Go to their website and check out what else they are doing. If you enjoyed listening to this podcast, be sure to check out other episodes. And if you think I should interview a certain folk and fairy tale, myths and legends storyteller, send me an email. You can also find me on Facebook and on my website, simonbrooksstoryteller.com, and on Instagram, Simon M. Brooks. Diamond Scree? Yep, that's me, the English fella and storyteller. A shout out to Chris Jedd for creating and recording and letting me use this wonderful music for my podcast. His band is called Blackpool Mecca. Check it out. You can keep this podcast alive and support my craft by becoming one of my patrons and paying anything from $1 for an episode that you enjoyed to a regular monthly subscription. In return, you get extras, early release, and exclusive content of my work. Thanks to all of you for supporting my little podcast. I greatly appreciate it. Want your name mentioned? Join the little tribe. If you can't join these wonderful folks, then please help me out by doing something you can do. I would be very grateful if you were to leave a review on Podbean, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, wherever you find this episode. It won't take long and it helps not just me, but others to find and enjoy this podcast. Thanks again for being here with me. I know that there are a lot of other places you could be, and I appreciate it. Until next time, be healthy, be happy, and share the stories you love. See ya. Simon out.
It's just a story. Just a story. Yeah.